I'm just going to say the old man winter is knocking at the door. It is in the teens outside today. The sun up there is hidden behind a bank of haze and fog. It is cold. My drone won't fly. So, and I've got quite a bit of a hike to get to this trail cam that I'm going to now. Beautiful morning to be out. And this is a short midweek devotion from Littleton United Methodist Church. I'll tell you what, I feel great. I was sitting at home and it dawned on me that my deadline's coming up pretty fast. I made a goal for myself that I would get one of these videos out every Wednesday. Well, I'm running out of time. But I had a problem. You see, at home, in my living room, there is a great big old reclining chair. And if you pop up, flip over this arm, it has a button that turns on the vibrator and a button that turns on the heat. And if you flip over this arm, there's a little spot in there that holds the remote control to the TV. Well, it's cold out there today. And I thought to myself, I need to go run that trail camera and go out and get some pictures and put together that video. And then I said to myself, no! I have come to the idea, the conclusion. Now, those of you that are country folk, you'll understand this reference. Those of you that are city may not. But I have come to the conclusion that big reclining chairs are sort of like the conibear traps for the elderly. You walk over and you sit in them and they swallow you and you get hooked and you can't get out of them even if you want to. But once you do, you feel better. And I remember that last week our devotion was by Jean-Pierre de Caussade. It was on the sacrament of the present moment. And I'm pretty sure that engaging with God in the present moment a few moments ago was more out doing getting the devotion ready and running the trail cam than sitting there in the lawn chair and watching TV. I'm pretty sure. Although there was the pull to the lawn chair. Well, today we're going to look at another saying by de Caussade. Now, there is a problem with this idea of the sacrament of the present moment. You may have, several of you have been talking about this during the week. It's been a subject of conversation. You may have already come up with this. But one of the problems with it is that all present moments are not the same. Now, just like my body was crying out no it did not want to leave that reclining chair and put on all those clothes and walk out into a temperature that was in the teens in the middle of winter and walk down a creek to look for a picture of a coyote. Just because, same way that my body did not want to do that. Sometimes our souls don't want to live in the present moment. There are moments when we are walking down the wedding aisle on one of the greatest days of our lives. There are days when we are welcoming a new member into our family. And there are days we are standing near a graveside saying goodbye to a dear member of our family or a friend. There are days when we are sitting anxiously in a doctor's office, fearful of what the doctor's about to say when we walk through that door. And so all moments aren't the same. And some moments, it's a lot easier to consider them sacramental times of worship with God than other times. Well, this was not a new issue to us alone, and it was not an issue that was unknown to Jean-Pierre de Caussade. He had another phrase. I told you last week there were two phrases that I have wrestled with that stick out to me. And the first phrase is the sacrament of the present moment. But the second phrase is much tougher. That is self-abandonment to divine providence. What de Caussade is saying is that the good moments and bad moments are still the moments we're living in, and they are still where God is, and that those can be sacred moments, both of them. We often learn from the painful times. And de Caussade trusted that God would, it's hard for us to trust sometimes, but that God would not allow us to suffer more than what he and we together can handle, because he will be there. And over the lifetime, we will look back and see some of the painful moments were just as sacred, just as growthful as some of the good moments. I think this is hard to handle. We don't know what to do with it. It sounds foreign. It almost sounds like like it's a heresy for us to be talking like this. It comes from a different day, a different age, a different culture. We live in a culture that is, if I could call it anything, I think I would call it hedonistic. That is, we as a people believe that pleasure is perhaps the greatest good. We look for the bright things, the things that make us happy. The things we consider good in life are those things that make us the happiest. And de Caussade, that was not unknown to him, but that wasn't a culture he lived in, where people had to wrestle with a lot more pain. I think he has something to say to us that is valuable. I've alluded to this a couple of times in these few short moments, but when I look back at my life, I see the value in some of the painful times. Now, de Caussade would go so far as to say that we should thank God for the good and thank God for the bad. That we should live in the moment, and every moment realize that whether it's good or whether it's bad, or whether God perhaps divinely heals us, or whether or not we suffer, either way, that we should consider those sacred moments given to God, and that God will carry us through it. I remember once when I was a young man, maybe entering middle age, a young man in my 40s, middle-aged man in my 40s. I was talking to another young man in his 20s, and I mentioned, it was kind of an idea that was kind of bouncing around in my head. I mentioned that if you find a deep person you've also found a person that suffered. Because there's a lot of growth and depth that comes in the dark hour. Well, now I'm no longer a young man or a middle-aged man. I am now a man in my 60s, entering into my twilight years. I don't know. And I think it's more true today than it was then. I mean, that it seems more profound to me today than it was then. That we grow in our suffering. And we as Christians do not have the luxury of wasting our suffering. They need to be times when we cling to God, and times when we grow, and times where God makes something wonderful come out of it. I don't say God causes the suffering in our lives, but I do think that when we ask questions like, if we are Christian, and we ask questions like, how can a good God allow bad things to happen? Or ask questions like, why is it the good that always go through rough times? Or ask questions like, how can the good suffer? I think sometimes, or why am I suffering? God, why do I have to go through this? Even when we're getting mad at God, as hard as it sounds, I think we may be asking the wrong question. Maybe the question shouldn't be, God, explain yourself. God, show me. God, why is this? I think the question might be, God, how should I be responding to this? God, how are we going to handle this? God, make something good come out of this. That is, it puts more of the question onto our response to the pain than on whether or not God has let us down, or whether or not we could figure out why God allows what God allows anyway. So, Jean-Pierre de Caussade, that is, the sacrament of the present moment, and connected with that, abandonment to divine providence. They're revolutionary ideas. They'll change your life. You might have to wrestle with them a bit. We've been talking about a number of painful, dark things today, and my prayer for you is that in this week, in this present moment, that you will be delivered and that God will bless you and that you will not have to go through any more pain than what you've already suffered. But if you do, my prayer is that God will carry you through and make something beautiful come out of that's ugly. May God bless you and watch over you and be with you during this holiday season. We celebrate Christ's birth.